Good evening, everyone. This is Prepare Like a Pro. I'm going to be going through some Grandmaster games where I show how preparation helped one player gain an edge either on the board or on the clock or psychologically. Preparation is such an important part of modern chess. It can, in many cases, just determine the outcome of the game. So it's super important these days to be extra prepared, and hopefully these games will be a good illustration of that. So let's start off with this game. I'm just going to go over to my Elite Chess board. So this is one of my games. I was white in this game, and I was playing a player who I knew was... So yeah, I was playing white in this game against another strong Grandmaster who I knew was very well prepared, theoretically. So for the game, I was thinking, how could I try to get him out of preparation, make him uncomfortable early on, make him start thinking. So I came up with this line while I was preparing, so let me just show that to you. So this is a typical Sicilian. Now the main line here is to play knight c3. White defends the pawn in e4. And usually black players want to play knight c6. I call this the two-knight Sicilian. I don't know what the official name is, but black develops both their knights early. And it leads to some really sharp and complicated positions. So the main line goes knight takes, black recaptures towards the center, white pushes the pawn. So what's the point of black's play? They're basically allowing white to grab space in the center, but they're claiming that white's pawn will be overextended, and they have enough dynamic counterplay to counter. So knight e4, that's how the main line goes. Queen c7, hitting the pawn, f4, and you can already see like this is going to lead to some complications. White's opened up their king. They've already pushed their f pawn before castling, and needless to say, I didn't want to get involved in this mess. So before the game, I prepared this move bishop d3, which is super rare, especially at the Grandmaster level. There are almost no games, at least when I played it. Maybe now there have been more games. That's the way modern chess works. You play one idea, and all of a sudden everyone is aware of it within a few days, if not a few hours. So I prepared bishop d3. He went knight c6 as expected, very typical. I captured. He took back with the b pawn. And the point of this setup is this following move, bishop f4. And it's really strange the way white's playing. I mean, we're not developing the knight immediately. We're moving our bishop out so quickly. It's very unusual for this line. But the point is, I've gotten him out of prep. He's unfamiliar with the structure, and that's super unpleasant when you're sitting there thinking over the board, knowing that your opponent's prepared. You're building an edge on the clock while the opponent's falling behind. It can provide a big psychological boost. So bishop f4, what's the point of this move? I'm delaying the development of this knight, and I'm eyeing this potential d6 square as a future weakness for black, which is why black went d5. It's a very good move, not allowing me to potentially take control of the square later and counterattacking in the center. Now there are a few ways to play this position. e5 looks very natural, but I don't think there's any need to rush in with that. And the other point of developing the bishop first is to make space for this knight on d2, on the d2 square. So I'm developing my knight on d2 instead of c3. If I were to develop from c3, can anyone tell me why this would be imprecise now? What could black play here that would put some pressure on white's position? So think about it in context of the center, right? Black's attacking white's central pawn on e4. White's trying to defend it. But the knight on c3 is a bit vulnerable to a certain move here. So who can tell me what's black's best move here? Yeah, very good. Was that your answer as well?
I was going to say push.
You mean like d4?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's also a reasonable move, hitting the knight back, and it does gain a tempo. Nothing wrong with that. Bishop b4 is just a little bit more accurate because it immediately puts pressure on the knight. Now your idea would be even stronger, right? Because you'd pin the knight to the king. And we're also threatening to take this pawn because this knight is pinned now. So I think black would just be doing very well here. So that's why we go with the knight to d2. And if the black bishop comes out to b4, how can we easily counter this? Yeah, we would just play c3, and this would just be a waste of time. So very simple and solid setup for white. Bring the bishop out, bring the knight out. We've defended our center, and now the question, the onus is on black. How does he want to handle this position? It's a very unusual structure. It's not easy to decide over the board. My opponent went for queen b6, which was a very principled move. So they're immediately attacking b2. Now I could waste the tempo and defend the pawn, but it's not really in the spirit of the position, especially with our fast development. We've already got our pieces out and the black king still in the center. I castle. This was still part of my preparation. I vaguely remembered castle was the move. We don't really care about this pawn. So let's see why. What happens if black takes this pawn? We don't have an immediate way to refute this. It's not like we're trapping the queen or anything. But considering black's king is still in the center, going after this pawn is extremely risky. So what's the general idea? When the opponent's king is stuck in the center, what are we trying to do? Exactly, we want to open it. So do we have any ideas of how we can open the center? Okay, so we could take the pawn, and obviously we'd love it if black took back with the e-pawn, but I don't have to do that, right? He can keep the center closed, either take with the knight or maybe just take with the pawn. And the e-file remains closed, and we still have some compensation here, obviously, but I'm not sure taking the pawn immediately helps us all that much. So what's another way to do this? How can we break up that center and potentially open it?
Oh, c4.
Yeah, very good, c4. Do you agree with that move?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good, c4. And white's simply exploiting the center. Now we're ready to take and open everything up, and it's going to be very hard for black to complete their development with the center opening like that. So taking the pawn is extremely risky, which is why my opponent played bishop a6. And this was still part of my preparation. And I remember, let me just make sure I have the right move here. I remember in my pregame preparation that the computer wanted to take the bishop. Yeah, okay, so the computer wanted to take the bishop and then take the pawn, something like this. But I found a more practical solution, which the computer doesn't like as much, but I think it causes more problems to a human opponent over the board. So again, I went with this idea of c4. Simply saying, okay, I'm not going to make it easy on you. I'm not going to give you an easy move by trading and allowing you to recapture. I'm going to keep the tension in the center. I'm going to keep the bishops. And again, I'm going to ask you, how do you want to handle this position? So my opponent played bishop b4. So already this is a mistake, and the position is really critical for black. It might be almost lost. The tactics are just not working out for him. So let's see what happened. I took on d5. They played c takes d5. Let me just make sure I have the right moves here. Oh, sorry. They played knight takes d5. That was actually going to be my question. What happens if they play c takes d5? Can anyone tell me what's the tactical refutation to this move? So think about the potential here and that open king on e8. Very good. So let's say you want to start with queen a4 check?
Nothing yet. C takes. The bishop is hanging.
It's true. Yeah, no worries. Keep thinking. I'll just look at the chat for a brief sec. I just noticed some people are writing. Some suggestions similar to what you guys are saying. c5. Ideas connected to that. So what do we think? Do we play c5 first? First of all, what do you think is the idea of c5? Do we see the idea of black recaptures? So what's the point of sacrificing this pawn? It allows us to open up the diagonal with tempo, and what can we do now?
Oh, now you get the check.
Yeah, very good. Now we take advantage of this open diagonal, and we fork the bishop as well. So we would just win a piece. So it's clear black can recapture, and it seems like this is just winning. Maybe black can play queen a5. So I don't take the pawn, and I hold on to this bishop. And white's still obviously doing very well, but this move order is imprecise because it allows black to hang on a bit. So how can we fix that? Oftentimes reversing the move order is usually the correct way to do it. Yeah, very good. We start with the check. And that makes a big difference because whatever black does, whether they play knight d7 or king f8, it doesn't matter. Let's just say king f8. What do we play now? Exactly. Now he goes c5, and switching the move order makes a big difference. Now they don't have queen a5 because we would take and we'd win the piece. And so after c5, we're just winning a piece no matter what. There's a double attack on the bishop. So that's why black didn't play c takes d5. And obviously, taking with the e-pawn would just be equivalent to resignation, right? Like opening up the e-file, why would just give a check, and black's king is going to be in trouble for the rest of the game. So that's why they played knight takes d5, which is a clever resource. So they're saying, okay, if you take, I'll take back here. And obviously white doesn't want to allow this because the rook's also under attack, and after we save the rook, he'll be able to take the pawn safely. There's no queen a4 trick anymore. So we don't want to, we don't want to take the knight. So in the game, I drop back, bishop g3. My opponent played rook d8, lining up on the d-file. Again, I don't really want to take just yet because bishop takes d3 is there. So I played knight e4. Now I'm threatening to take because the queen's defending the bishop. And here my opponent played, let me just double check. Yeah, knight e7. So now they save their knight, they're opening up the rook, and Can someone tell me what their threat is? Let's say it was black's move again here. What are they threatening? Especially with the rook on d8. Yeah, very good, house gal. Bishop takes what? Yeah, very good. Bishop takes c4 is a threat now. So let's just make a random move to demonstrate. This is obviously a big threat, exploiting the pin on the d file. So we have to be careful of that. So after knight e7, okay, so I played a3. This initiated a very complicated sequence, but it's gonna be good for white. Bishop takes c4, black played. So I'm allowing this, but I'm not planning to take back, obviously. My point was to take here. A takes b4. You just skim over the next few moves. They're not particularly important. Yes, I want to get to a different position later on. So bishop takes d3. They're recaptured. I gave a check, and this is all forcing. Bishop takes f1. So instead of recapturing, I played bishop c5 first. And this makes a big difference. So you guys will see why in a few moves. So after bishop c5, I'm basically saying, okay, I'm opening the path to the queen, and maybe I'm ready to come to d6. So black needs to deal with that first. Maybe I can even consider playing rook takes a7. This bishop's not going anywhere, especially with the king still on e8 and all these hanging pieces. So bishop c5 is a useful intermediate move. They played queen d8. Okay, so first question, do we want to trade queens? Intuitively, does that make sense? Do you think we should trade queens? Okay, and why not?
Black king in the center.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. Yeah, so black's king is still in the center. We have better development. We have more activity. Doesn't make sense to trade queens. That would be a bailout. Queen takes f1. So yeah, obviously we don't trade queens. Just got a question in the chat. Instead of rook d8, maybe black should have castle. Let's just address that really quickly. So they're saying black should have long castle. That's a very interesting move, but it looks very shaky still, right? The king is still not exactly safe here. The bishop controls that diagonal. And I think if white just played in the same way, knight e4, this is still going to be a long-term issue for black with the king on c8. I don't think the king is particularly safe there, but interesting idea. So yeah, let's get back to the game. Rook d8, knight e4, knight e7, a3, yep, take. All right, so we went for this. Okay, and now black castle. So it seems like black's gotten their king to safety, and the worst is behind them. The only small issue for them is that the knight is still pinned, and this is quite annoying, but okay, they're planning to play rook e8 next move to break the pin, and then finally bring their knight to the center. Once they do that, they'll be completely fine. So white needs to act quickly here if we want to exploit our advantage. So who can come up with a tactical idea here that wins the game on the spot? So there are a lot of candidate moves to consider. Let's first start with that. So come up with some candidate moves, and we'll go through them one by one.
Not taking on a7.
With which piece?
You can take a beer with these, but you want to keep the pin and just again you take, then they could play knight to d5.
Okay, so yeah, obviously taking with a bishop would make no sense, right? Because we break the pin, that just helps black to untangle. We don't want to do that. Rook takes a7 seems interesting though, right? Doesn't it add another attacker to the knight on e7? We still keep the pin, right? e8, yeah, very good. So rook a7 is super tempting because it wins a pawn and it attacks this piece. But yeah, after rook e8, we actually don't have a follow-up here. Black's probably just fine. I mean, white's a bit better still because of the superior activity, but rook e8, knight's coming to d5. It's going to be very hard for us to break through. So rook takes a7 actually allows black to escape. Let's come up with some other candidate moves now. Yeah, very good house gal. Rook a7 is definitely the first candidate move, but if we can't make that work, we got to go to the next one. So what are some other ideas here? Okay, very good. Rook d1 is a very logical candidate move. We're attacking the queen. All right, now I'm going to play queen c7. Now we have to ask ourselves, do we have a good follow-up here?
Oh, well.
What about you guys in the chat? You think we have anything after rook d1, queen c7? Feels like there should be something, but maybe there isn't. Okay, so bishop d6. We attack the queen, but again, if I just sidestep, it feels like it was just an empty thread, right? And he's ready to play rook e8 or wherever to break the pin, and then the knight's coming out again. And in the chat, we have a suggestion, queen a6. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with this move. White obviously still has some pressure here, clearly, but our main goal, especially in that initial position back here, is to somehow exploit this pin. And so after queen a6, we might pick up this pawn, but Black's more than happy to give it up if it means they can get their knight out now. And this pawn isn't really that meaningful, especially since we have double pawns on the b file. It's not like winning this pawn is going to give us a passed pawn or anything. So I think Black would be happy if we went for this. So rook d1 is very natural again, but it doesn't actually lead anywhere after queen c7. Okay, so now we have to think a little bit more creatively because the obvious candidate moves aren't working. So now we need to come up with a new idea to exploit this pin. And it's probably going to be something related to getting rid of that queen on d8 or somehow disrupting it. If nothing else, make room for the white king. Yeah, we could play obviously a move like h3, which is an improving move that creates space for the king. But again, we don't have time for these moves because we're trying to act quickly here and exploit this pin. If we play a move like h3, Black's going to break the pin, right? Rook e8 and then get their knight out. So we need to do something quickly here. Okay, h1 chess, that's a very interesting idea. Can you maybe provide a variation in the chat as well? Tell me what you've calculated. All right, very good. Man with head of dog. Good solution.
Black could also have some back rank issues.
Yeah, that's true. That does come into play.
So queen to d1.
Okay, queen d1. And that's what the chat's screaming as well. So let's look at this move, queen d1. It seems so counterintuitive. Why are we offering a trade of queens after we just say we don't want to trade queens? Well, again, in chess, we have to look at everything concretely, right? Sometimes what's intuitively correct may not be actually true if we look at it a little bit closer. So queen d1, we're offering a trade of queens here, but again, the concrete point is that we're trying to get rid of the defender of the e7 knight, and this move completely disrupts black defense. So I don't have time for moves like rook e8 because we'll trade and pick up the piece. And like you said, there's a back rank issue for black. So what if I play queen takes and then rook e8?
Oh yeah, then just bishop takes.
Yeah, bishop takes e7. We just simply take the knight and win a piece because they can recapture. Rook d8 is mate. Very good. Okay, so after queen d1, black really doesn't have many choices here. They can either play queen e8 or queen c7. So this one is easier, I think. What if queen c7? Okay, very good. Rook takes a7. Now, there's still a couple of tricky parts we have to navigate here. So after rook takes a7, I'm going to hit you back. I'm going to counterattack and play rook d8. So I'm going to try to exploit your back rank issues. But if you're careful, it shouldn't make a difference. You'll be able to cleanly win that piece on e7. So after rook d8, where should we move our queen? What's the safest place to move our queen? There's one very professional move here. Many squares win, but only one is the Grandmaster move. Yeah, very good h1 chess. That's definitely the best square. Queen d6? Over here? You sure?
Oh yeah,
rook will just take, right? We just lose our queen. Exactly, yeah. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be anything flashy, right? We just want to get our queen to a safe square because again, this knight is still waiting for us at the end of all this. So if we can just get our queen to safety, we can pick up the piece on the next move. So what's the safest square to move the queen to? That also keeps the back rank very safe.
What about queen a1?
Queen a1?
Yeah, close the back rank and then makes a boundary.
Yeah, so that wins. There's nothing wrong with this move, but I think there's a more secure move here, which was also suggested in the chat. Queen f1. I think this is just a bit safer because you keep your queen tucked away near the king, and now technically there are no more checks, right? Like queen a1, technically this back rank is still a bit exposed. Black doesn't actually have a way to exploit it, but I want to show you what I mean. So what if white is careless and plays a move like queen e1? This is actually a big blunder. Completely flips the game. black's completely fine now, so what could be wrong with queen e1? I'll flip the board also.
He could sacrifice his
Huh?
e6, and if you take that, the rook, the rook goes to
Very good. This is what you meant, right? Queen e5?
oh yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, very good. Queen e5. So black exploits our back rank. Now it just shows why putting the queen on an unprotected square can make it vulnerable. So queen takes e5, rook d1 would be mate. So we wouldn't be able to take. We'd have to waste a move, and then they can get their knight out to safety. And similarly in the chat, queen c1 was also suggested. Why does this not work? This is also a big mistake.
Same idea. You play what, queen f4.
Yeah, very good. Queen f4 here now. And again, we can't take because the back rank mate, and once we waste a move to save our queen, their knight escapes. So that's why queen a1 or queen f1 are the only, or maybe queen b1 works too, but yeah, queen f1 is the safest move. Queen a1 also wins, but either of those moves, white's just winning the piece here. Okay, so I can't play queen c7. So what happens after queen e8 now? This is very passive, right? I'm cramping my own rook. So we have a little bit more time to work with now. You did say that, Los Ange, but it wasn't good in that position. We had to do something faster.
What about queen d6 here?
Queen d6?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Queen d6 looks very logical. We're attacking the knight. I'm guessing black plays knight. And this does win for sure. Knight g6. Yeah, this definitely wins. This is not what I played in the game, but this clearly wins also. Can you just figure out a way to win the rook now? Oh, actually, I think I know why I didn't play this. I think knight c8 might be a trickier defense here. So, or actually, no, knight g6 might work as well. So I was just thinking knight g6. Let me just show you. So I was thinking queen c7 to prevent the knight from coming back. And now I just realized black might have this move queen d8. We don't have time to take the rook, right? Because the queen's hanging. And if we move the queen, I've gained that extra tempo to get my rook t8, right? So queen d6, maybe it wins. There's a way to somehow win the rook, but it runs into those issues as well. So there's a much simpler solution where you don't really have to calculate that much. Yeah, rook takes a7. That's much simpler. And now the knight's attacked again. So if I go knight c8, that's really my only try here to counterattack the rook.
Rook a8.
Rook a8, I think, runs into that same trick again, right? Queen d8. So what's a very simple solution which just prevents queen d8? Because again, as long as we keep control of the 7th rank, they can't come back to e7, right? So we just need to find a move that stops knight e7 and stops queen d8.
Rook d7.
Rook d7, yeah, very good. Yep, good job in the chat as well. Rook d7. Now I can't go back, and I can't play queen d8, and we'll just pick up the rook on the next move. That's completely winning. Let's see, do I have any other tries? What if actually I try queen d8 immediately? What if I try this? Going for some back rank tricks. How do we refute this? You want to play rook d7? Yep, very good, chat. What's causing you to hesitate there? Don't worry about my cadence. I could be trying to trick you as well.
Yeah, I mean, the queen's attacked, the knight's still attacked.
Mm-hmm.
You make the battery, you're defending.
Mm-hmm. So it looks good? All right, yeah, it is good. Yeah, rook d7, that's it. We just attack the queen, cover the back rank, and then we'll pick up the knight on the next move. So nicely done. Queen d1. After this, black's just completely losing no matter what he plays. We're going to win material no matter what. and I won a few moves later. All right, so let's go to the next game now. Still sticking with this preparation theme. So this game was played shortly after this one, I think. Let me add a new chapter. Okay, so I was white again. Now my opponent didn't really have many games. I was playing a low-rated player. It wasn't a GM. It was a 2200. And it's always tricky in these situations because you have a bunch of games that they can look at and prepare for, and you can't really prepare for them. So oftentimes in these situations, it's best, especially for high-rated, just to surprise them by playing something you haven't really played. Just get them out of prep and then, use your superior knowledge and understanding to beat them later in the game. So that's what I was going for, at least. But we ended up getting a theoretical battle, which is what I was trying to avoid. But even there, I still managed to get a little edge in preparation because I had studied the position a bit deeper than him. So let's just see what happened. Oh, sorry, not castle. So we have a Nimzo. I played e3. He played b6. The main line is castle, but b6 is also very playable these days. Black's basically hoping to develop this bishop very quickly and attack white's center like this. So usually in these cases, when black doesn't really challenge white immediately, white just reinforces the knight on c3. That way, if black ever takes now, we will take back with the knight and keep our pawn structure intact. So we're still following theory here. This is the main line. Bishop a6 was played. I played a3. Let me just go over it here to make sure I'm not misremembering. Oh, yeah, I already misremembered. It's not a3. a3 is one of the moves, though. I've played this in another game. It's knight g3. Yeah, somehow I can never remember my own game. So knight g3 was played. Castle. And yeah, I played E. Okay, so we're already getting some sharp stuff here. I played e4. So that's the point of this setup, to play knight g3. a3 is a little bit more solid because it forces this. And white reinforces the center like this. It's considered to be slightly better for white, but I didn't want to get into such a dry position against a low-rated player. That's why I played knight g3, castle, e4, much more aggressive. So I'm immediately advancing in the center. I have a little flexibility because the center is technically closed, so I don't have to worry about the center opening up just yet. But obviously I still have to play it carefully because my king is still on e1. But this leads to a lot of complications now. So my opponent played, let's see, did he play c5 or d5? Neither. He played knight c6, okay. So a strange move, but so obviously something like d5 or c5 would be more typical, right? To counterattack in the center, but it doesn't actually do anything. c5 I can just meet with d5, keeping the center relatively closed, and d5 allows me to push with e5, right? And then I get a nice structure I can then maybe develop, or maybe I can even take here first. And I'm okay with losing my casting rights because, again, the center is closed. I get a very nice structure in the center, and I have a lot of potential to attack on the king side here. This is generally a favorable structure for white. So my opponent played knight c6, which looks a bit strange, but it has an idea. One of them is to play knight a5 and go after this pawn, because now that pawn would be hard to defend, right? I can't play b3 with this bishop on b4 because my knight would be hanging. All right, let me just see what happened after this. Okay, so I played bishop g5. We don't need to spend too much time on this. This is just preparation from both sides still. I played h4. That's sort of the point of developing the bishop to g5. I want to maintain this very annoying pin on the black knight. Obviously, I can't go bishop h4 because of g5. That would trap the bishop. So I play h4, and black can't really take because I would take, open up the h file, and that would be very dangerous. So they played d6 first. Okay, so it's a bit of a cat and mouse game now. White's trying to sort of develop and push forward on the king side. Black's trying to avoid taking this for as long as possible because, like I said, the opening up the h file will be very dangerous. Okay, rook c1. Okay, they decided to take now finally. This is still theory, I think. I think they played g6. Yeah, okay, so what's the point of g6 here? If I move the knight, queen h5 would just be immediately game over, right? It's going to be checkmate. f5 loses to g6, a very typical pattern, taking away the escape square, and now queen h8 is unavoidable. So the point of g6 is to take away the h5 square, and they're happy to give the piece back because as long as their king is safe, maybe the h file could be useful for them now. So oftentimes what happens is the opponent goes king g7 here and then brings their rook to h8. And once they get the h file covered, this entire plan might backfire for white because our king is still stuck on e1. And if we can't actually use the h file, then the entire point of this plan makes no sense. So g6, let me just see what I played here. Yeah, I took, kind of have to take the piece now, get it back. Queen a4. I still think we were both moving relatively quickly here. Yeah, queen g5. So he's attacking my rook. And I played this move, king d1. I think this is where he started thinking. I don't think he had checked king d1. So again, just a little bit of superior preparation here allowed me to get an edge in this game, because now he has to think in a very complicated position where one move could be the difference between, you know, equalizing the position and losing. And as a higher rated player, I'm happy to be in that situation, right? When my opponent has to think on his own. So king d1, bishop b7. All right, we're getting to the main part now. d5, take, yeah. Take. Okay, and knight d4. And this is really the main part which I want to go over with you guys. So after all those opening moves, we landed in this position. So what's going on here? Material is equal, but there's obviously an imbalance in the position, right? My king is on d1, which could be potentially very weak. My pieces are a bit disjointed, right? My queen is on a4, my rook's here, my knight's there, my rook's here, my bishop's undeveloped still. The h file is open, which is nice, but we don't have a way of exploiting it just yet, or so it seems. And black's ready to play king g7, that same idea we discussed, and go rook h8. Once they get control of the h file, white's going to be in big trouble, right? Because that's really our only hope of counterplay here. So what could be the move here which justifies the entire opening plan for white? Let's try to think on the king side here and come up with some ideas. What can white play here? It's both an attacking and prophylactic move. Yeah, house guy. It was still theory. I don't know how many games there are in this position, but I want to say at least a couple of moves ago there were still a fair amount of games. This isn't one of the main lines, though. It's technically a sideline, but even there, there's a lot of theory. There's theory everywhere in chess these days. I usually don't get involved in such theoretical battles. It just somehow happened in this game. Okay, chess lover, that's an interesting idea. But what if I play after that? I simply take on e5 with the queen, let's say. Any ideas over here? Okay, where would you want to develop?
Instinctively, I mean, d3, but you could also go to e2.
Okay, so we could develop to d3 or e2. Let's start with d3. So makes a lot of sense to develop, but it does cut off our rook, right?
Yeah, that's why I'll pop d2. I mean e2.
Okay, so we could play bishop e2. At least we keep the rook, the line of the rook open. But again, what was black ready to play? They want to play king g7, right? So I'm going to go king g7, and I'm ready to play rook h8 now. And unless you can see something here, I think black's going to be okay. Once they get control of the h file and trade one of the rooks, white's king is going to be the one that's in trouble. So maybe we got to do something a little bit quicker than that. So like I said, it's both an attacking and prophylactic move. You know that I want to play king g7, right? So try to think, what could be ways to prevent that?
Yeah, I want to move the knight.
Okay.
You can double up on the...
That's very good intuition. So try to think where you could jump with that knight.
Just go knight e2.
Okay, knight e2, that's a very popular suggestion in the chat as well. Yeah, house Gao, very nice. That's the best move. So let's look at knight e2 first. So makes a lot of sense to play rook h3, but again, it's maybe a bit slow because after we trade and you take back, I'm ready to play king g7 now, right? And when you play rook h3, how am I going to meet this move? Rook h8, right? And maybe I don't have to even play rook h8. I'm not even sure this is that big of a threat just yet. My king can always run, but I think rook h8 is probably the safest. And again, we've gotten control of the h file as black, and white's ideas kind of run out here. So knight e2 has the right idea of swinging the rook over, but again, it's a little slow, right? Because it allows king g7, rook h8. So where do we need to move the knight, which prevents the king g7, rook h8 idea? Yes, very good chess lover and Mr. Doctor.
Oh,
You do? Okay, let's hear it. Knight h5, very nice. You see that as well? Knight h5. So we're putting our knight on pre, but the cool thing is that black can't even actually take, because what do we play? Yeah, very good, rook g3. So we're basically sacrificing a piece without really sacrificing it. We would just win the queen here. And we stop king g7. And now black's in big trouble because now our rook's ready to swing over either the g3 or h3. And they can't contest the h file anymore, which is very important. So after knight h5, let me just see what black played. Okay, they played rook e8, makes a lot of sense. Now their defensive idea is to try to run out with the king here. But it's not really going to help them. It's too slow. I played rook g3. Black played queen e7. Yeah, okay. And now we have to find another very important move here. Again, it's not easy. So let's take our time. What do we need to do here to set up the final part of the attack? Remember, I'm hoping maybe to eventually escape here. So keeping that in mind, think about what piece you might need to involve here. Because the knight, while it's doing a good job of stopping king g7, we can't move it to involve the h rook just yet because it will allow king g7. So the knight's doing its job. Moving the rook, can't really move the rook, and the rook's doing its job as well. So what's the piece we need to try and involve here? The heavy artillery. Yeah, very good, the queen, and it seems like that's not going to be possible. That queen is so far away from the king's side. So now let's try to think. Maybe it's closer than we think. Is there a way for us to involve our queen? Very good, chess lover. That's definitely the way to do it. So the nice thing is we have a little bit of time here. Black doesn't really have any immediate threats. Yeah, they are maybe threatening to eventually open things up here. But that's still going to take him some time as well. That's going to take one, two, at least two moves. Yep, very good, house cow. That's also correct. So can we come up with the queen maneuver here to get it involved on the king's side? So think about it like this. If you could move your queen to any square on the board here, what square would you want it to go to? Yeah, if you get it to h6, it's game over, right? It's just going to be mate. So, yep, very good. Queen b4. Or as suggested in the chat, queen a3 as well. Both these moves are correct because the idea is after he takes d5, what do we play here? Queen d2, yeah, very good. And we're ready to transfer the queen. We're also hitting the knight, so we're able to do it with tempo, which is great. They can never take on e4. What do we play here? Yeah, very good, we fork. We don't play this now because we would get mated ourselves, but we just simply fork and pick up the queen, so they can't play that. And if they protect the knight with c5 or whatever, we would just play queen h6 and it's mate. So queen b4 is absolutely crushing here. Let me just see how black played. Okay, so they played ed5 and they played queen e5. So now we could play queen h6, still winning probably, but black is covering the squares for now, so there's no immediate mate. So let's maybe find another way to push forward before we try to get the queen back in there. Knight f5 doesn't work because we just take, right? There's no actual mate here. The queen's covering the e1 square. So after queen d2, queen e5, what can we play here? Civil. Well, we don't necessarily need to be civil here, right? We're just trying to open up black's king side. Rook g5, I'm sure that's a good move too. I think f4 is just more direct though. It just gets ready to open up the g file, and black really doesn't have much choice here. They have to run back to ha, which is a very sad square for the queen. White pushed forward with f5. D takes c4. All right, continue here as white. Yep, very good, casual player. Good to see you in the chat. Old friend of the channel. It does block our queen house gal, but only temporarily, right? Because we've played f5 on the next move. So the queen's been opened up again. Okay. So after f5, d takes c4, what's the logical move here? We don't need to overcomplicate things. Yeah, very good. Let's just open up that G file. And black tried one last resource here. They played e3, so they're trying to close the diagonal with the queen and create some kind of chaos here, but if we calculate correctly, it's pretty much going to be force mate now. So let's see if we can calculate a clean win here. So first thing you should notice that is after G takes F7, King takes F7, we actually don't have any good follow-up, right? Black's king is somewhat safe here. And now the position's a bit of a mess because we have to deal with this threat to our queen. We don't want to release the pressure prematurely by taking on F7, so let's try to come up with some other ideas. A lot of motifs in the air. The rook here, the rook there, and this pawn on G6, which is a monster. So let's see if we can put that all together. Okay, so you guys in the chat, can I get a variation maybe? A couple of moves of calculation. So what if black moves the queen in that position? So think where black might move the queen, and then what are you going to play? Yep, very good. Mr. Muffin. I think he's got it. Yep, chess lover. That's it. Nicely done. Okay, so what are we thinking about here? Yeah, go ahead. If you have an idea.
I wanted to say, I don't know if this would work, but I want to say if you push the pawn to G7,
Okay.
he takes your queen,
Mhm.
you take with the check and rook to queen, and he has to take back, and then you put the knight to F6.
Very good. That's checkmate. Awesome. Even simpler would just be to give checkmate immediately, right? We don't even have to take the queen, but yeah, you have the right idea. Great. So G7. So as black, I'm going to move my queen and keep this F6 square covered. Okay, so how do we respond to this step? We could just take the knight, obviously. That would be completely winning, but there's a much simpler solution. Yeah, we just play knight F6 anyways, right? So with the pawn on G7, we now have this H8 square which we can use. And after queen takes F6, what do we play? Yeah, very good. Rook H8, and it's mate. So black can't actually stop mate after queen H6. No matter what, we're just going to play knight F6 and rook H8. So let's just see in the chat. What are they saying? Yep, pretty much the same thing. Crazy house pattern. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, after G7, queen H6, knight F6, that's how the game ended, and rook H8 was mate. All right, that was a fun one. Let's go to the next game. Let me see which one I want to do. Let's do this one. So I'm going to skim through the opening moves really quickly. Okay, so I'm white again in this game against another strong Grandmaster. All right, so I played the Italian. Knight F6, D3, just very typical theory. In this line, there are a million move orders here. Anything is playable. Let me just make sure I remember what I did. Yeah, so I played bishop G5, which is more of a modern move. Not as much theory here. It leads to more imbalanced positions. And I was just trying to surprise my opponent because I had never played it before. So bishop G5, what's the idea of developing the bishop so early? We immediately pin the knight and sort of ask black what structure they want to go for. Do they want to break the pin immediately? Some people prefer to do that with bringing the bishop back to E7, breaks the pin, right? Some people prefer to just ignore it and play D6. So they allow themselves to remain in this pin, but later on they're going to break it here. They plan to play more aggressively on the king side. I think that's what my opponent played. Yeah, he played H6 first and then D6. I played C3, A5. All right, this is all some kind of weird theory. Knight D2. All right, so what's the point of A5? Just limiting white from expanding on the queen side. So knight D2. Black played bishop A7. Okay, and I played this move A4 here, which was my preparation. This was sort of the position I was hoping to get. Now, the computer is not the biggest fan of white in these positions. It always claims black slightly better. But again, from a human perspective, it just seems more comfortable to play for white. I have better development. Black has to deal with this annoying pin. And if they do decide to play G5, then at least we can say we've compromised their structure a bit. So white has a little bit of a practical edge in these positions, I think. All right, so he played queen E7, which is a very logical waiting move. He's still waiting to see how I develop. I castled, yeah, and then he played G5. All right, so I have to drop my bishop back. The only downside of this line is that the bishop's somewhat out of play on g3. It's not really doing anything anymore. It could be vulnerable to moves like knight h5 or maybe h5, h4 later on. But for now, black can't really do any of that. So he castled, which I think is a bit of a mistake because if you're playing so aggressively on the king side with g5 and your king's still on e8, it doesn't really make sense to castle because now you've justified this entire setup for white. Now, I don't really have to worry about any king side initiative because that would weaken his own king, and I feel like the opening's been a success for me now. So castle is probably a bit of a mistake. I played rook e1. Again, just a typical Italian move, clearing space for the knight to go to f1, maybe jump into e3, and enter the d5 or f5 square. And then my opponent made a really serious mistake here. They played g4, so already a move or two out of preparation, they've messed up here. So again, we've gotten a nice edge with some good preparation before the game, a little bit of a practical choice with this setup, and they've already made a serious error with g4. So now let's try to think here, what can we do to exploit black's last move? It's not an easy concept, but let's come up with some candidate moves first. That's usually the best way to approach these things. So we'll come up with some ideas and go through them one by one. Right? That's definitely a move that has to be considered. It's the only square for a knight. Knight h4. All right, that's definitely the first candidate move. I agree. So let's look at that. Knight h4, there's nothing wrong with this move. We could come into f5. We're also threatening to play knight g6 because of the pin here, which is nice. Let's say black plays king g7. So I'm stepping out of the pin, avoiding the knight g6 trap. We could always hop in with knight f5, and I think white would be a bit better here. But it's still very unclear. I mean, this pawn could be a bit of a weakness. For instance, black could play queen d7, and I'm not really sure what's going on here. White probably has some compensation for the pawn. But in general, I felt that after knight h4, king g7, this knight is just super out of place for the rest of the game. Like eventually I'll have to play knight f5, but I don't know if I want to have this pawn in f5, which would be a weakness. And maybe later on they can also get control of the center with d5. I didn't really want to go for that. So I started thinking about some other ideas here. So let's see if we can come up with the alternative to knight h4. So we're not going to save our knight here. We're going to try to do something else. So think about black structure on the king side, how they weakened it. Could we exploit that in some way?
Could you set up knight to a4 the bishop and then the establish the pin?
Yeah, very good. Do we all like that idea? Bishop h4. It seems strange, like white mouse slipped or something. Why are we playing bishop h4 instead of knight h4? But the point is, we're simply reestablishing this pin, and now that the pawn is no longer on g7, black doesn't have any more defenders. And if they take, how do we recapture? Very good. Queen takes. We're adding another attacker, so let's try to calculate this line. What does black have to play here? Only one move. King g7. Okay, so we've sacrificed a piece. Black is temporarily defending it. So now we need to act quickly here to make sure we can try to get our piece back and put some more pressure on his position. So let's try to think how we can add more attackers to that pin on f6.
Thing that comes to mind for me is like knight f1, knight g3, knight f5, but that seems way too slow.
Yeah, no, d4.
Oh, well, I guess where does the queen go to get out of the pin, though?
Right, yeah, it does seem slow, but again, concretely, black has no way of actually breaking the pin, right? Were you going to say something else? d4. I see your idea and it makes a lot of sense, but I don't have to take, right? I think I can get away with taking, but I think your idea was to sort of open things up like this, right? I think I can get away with this because this would hit my queen, right? So we don't have time to actually play knight e4. But even
e4 was actually the move I considered first with the same idea, but then it's not knight takes where the hits a queen.
Yeah, I think this is playable too. I just think it's maybe not as accurate because I'm not forced to take. I think I can, but I don't have to. Like, let's say I try to slowly untangle here somehow. Like, let's say, for instance, I want to try to reinforce the defense of this knight. I could play a move like knight b8 here. This is an interesting idea to keep in mind. So black undevelops their knight, but they're trying to relocate to d7, right? And once they get another defender to the f6 knight, then they can try to free up their queen. So d4 makes a lot of sense, but it might be a bit too slow. And knight f1 looks slow as well, but again, black has no way to actually break the pin. And we're ready to hop to the square on h5. And once the knight gets there, it's pretty much game over, right? We'll get the piece back and more. Black's king is so exposed.
Actually, one thing that I'm seeing now as well is if they persist with this knight b8, knight b7 plan,
Mm-hmm.
and that actually disconnects the bishop from f5. We could be playing knight f5.
Yeah, very good. So we could play knight g3, and this idea doesn't work because we would just fork the king and queen, right? So the nice thing about knight f1 is it kind of eliminates this idea as well. So let's just look at some candidate moves here for black to try to see if we can refute them one by one. So let's say the opponent goes bishop e6. So they're hoping you take, and then they can take and break the pin finally. Maybe they can even take with the f pawn, right? And open up the f file, get another defender, and that would just be game over, right? Because now we don't have any compensation. We don't have, and we have actually exploiting this pin. There are too many defenders. We obviously don't want to take here. So what should we play instead? Do we need to pay any attention to bishop e6? Or can we just continue with our plan? Yeah.
Because if knight g1, bishop
Mhm.
takes c4, then there's knight f5 again.
Yeah, very good. Knight g3, we just play bishop takes c4. We just play knight f5 if bishop takes c4. And even if we don't have knight f5, the cool thing is we could just take back and just re-emphasize the idea that black's completely stuck here. They can't actually break this pin. We still have the same threats in the position. If they play queen e6, how do we refute this? What's the right combination here?
Bishop f6, queen f6, knight h5.
Yeah, very good. We just take the knight first, remove the defender, the h5 square, and we win the queen anyways. So black's completely paralyzed after knight g3. Oops, sorry. Okay, so bishop e6 doesn't really work as a defense for black. Let's try to come up with another one. Okay, so let's say I go, how am I going to defend this? Let's say I play, okay, so let's say I play rook g8. A bit of a mysterious move, but there's an idea in mind here. So how do you want to continue now? Yep, good job in the chat, guys. Bishop f6, knight h5 in that previous position. So maybe try to think, yeah, go ahead.
If we try to persist with the idea, like knight g3, could there be bishop g4, bishop takes f6, it's check.
It's check, yeah, so.
Wait, bishop f6, queen f6, if queen g4, there is a problem on f2. And then after the king moves away, our queen is attacked.
Yeah, so it's true that there is a little bit of a double attack here, but we can easily counter that, right? If we just move our queen to a square, covers f, yeah, queen e2, queen f5, either way, and we're going to be up material with a much better structure as well, right? Black structure is broken, so that doesn't work for black. So what do you think black could be aiming for instead? Let's look at it from black's perspective. So you're looking at this position from black's side. You know that white's threatening either knight h5 or bishop f6 and knight h5. By process of elimination here, what's the only defense? Yeah, very good casual player. Well, Becky, if we're black, we don't want to maybe abandon a knight for free, but we're hoping to get something in return for it. So first we need to figure out what the idea is for black here. Because we are up a piece, so even if we give back some material, even if it's the queen at some point, as long as we get a bunch of pieces in return, it'd be a good trade for black. What's the only way here to stop essentially bishop f6 and knight h5 while keeping this knight protected? Any ideas?
King g6 gets out of the fort.
Yeah, very good. King g6. Weird move, just moving the king up and seemingly closer to white's pieces, but it gets out of the fork like you said. Now, the problem here is that, okay, I played rook g8, which is not very good because it still allows knight h5. The point was to demonstrate this idea for black, but here, because the rook's no longer on f8, this would just backfire anyways. white would just win there. But let's just say I don't play rook g8. Let's just say I play bishop d7. So knight g3, king g6, and now I'm happy to sacrifice the queen. I have 3 pieces for the queen. I have reasonable coordination. My structure is a bit damaged, but that's okay. My king is safe. All these squares are covered. And I'd say that black has enough compensation here. I mean, this could easily backfire for white as well, because once black starts opening things up, we could have issues on the f file, especially this f2 pawn. So I don't think knight g3 is the best move anymore after a move like bishop d7. So let's look at it again from white's perspective. So let's say bishop d7. Let's come up with another idea here for white. So this knight g3 move is super tempting, but king g6, there's no clear continuation after that. So what could be another idea now? It's very, very strong. It's crushing. It always depends, Becky, right? Sometimes the 3 pieces are better, sometimes the queen's better. In that particular position, I think the 3 pieces would be better because black's able to cover all the weak squares around their king and their coordination is good.
Black is still a little bit paralyzed. I wonder if we could actually go knight e3 into d5.
Okay.
Exploiting the pin on the other side. And if bishop takes, we can have pawn takes and bring the rook to the f1 square.
Yeah, very good. So instead of going knight g3, we just simply go back the other way here. And like you said, we're threatening knight d5 now. That's a big threat. And what happens if black takes? What if they just chop that knight off? Yeah, f takes. We agree with that?
Yeah, I was thinking, okay, maybe there's something wrong with pawn takes if he's asking the question.
No, it's just, yeah. Don't worry about the way I ask it. I'm just asking like normally. So yeah, f takes e3. We simply open up the f file, right? And we can use that now as an avenue for attack. And there's no way for, yeah, very good in the chat. F takes e3 and rook 1. There's no way for black to stop us from piling up on the knight on f6. Very nicely done. So yeah, after knight f1, black's probably lost. Maybe the computer can defend, but from a human perspective, it's impossible. There are just too many different ways for white to attack, and black can't cover all the squares. So yeah, g4 was a big mistake because of bishop h4, and this pin just ends up being deadly. And the nice thing here for white is even if black doesn't take, so let's just say they leave the knight here, they try to ignore it and pretend everything's fine, let's say they develop, we just simply continue the same way we would have if black took the knight, right? We just go knight f1 anyways, and we're ready with the same idea here. And again, they can't break this pin. So eventually they're going to have to take, but then we'll just transpose back into this position. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today. Any questions? Anyone in the chat? Any questions about preparation or anything? Be happy to answer. Okay, if not, then I think we're good.
Go back to when black first played g5.
Okay, we do have a question, so let's go back here.
It's the same. It's like
yeah, g5.
So the knight takes immediately. I know what black had the castle here.
Over here.
Yeah.
So
this is just maybe something I would play in a blitz game.
Yeah, that definitely looks like a blitz or bullet move, but like you said, with black's king still being on e8, he hasn't castled. It doesn't make as much sense, right? We wouldn't be able to generate enough play, I think, and black could always maybe run their king to the queen side now. Like, let's say I go bishop e6. It's just too slow now, right? Like, let's say long castle.
What about queen f3?
Yeah, that's true. I could go queen f3. So maybe instead of that, I'll just start attacking your bishop immediately. How about that? Yeah. h4, and I'm happy to sacrifice, right? Because I have enough material, and also this might just backfire for us now. Our king could be the one under fire. So yeah, you never want to really sack on g5 unless black's castled. It's almost always going to be bad for white. Yep, thanks guys in the chat. Great work today. Not sure what my next stream is, but I'm going to be a resident GM for the next couple of weeks. So make sure to keep an eye on the club's Twitch channel, the YouTube channel for more content in the coming days.
You good?
Yeah, I think we're good.